You're listening to Power Business with Tehillah Niselow. Monday to Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m.
Power Breakfast on Power 98.7.
I have no doubt that Jerome Konazi did not do this because he wants to be the top cop. But I do have a question around, this is a political battle now. If you are a politician in this country and you're looking at Jerome Konazi, right now Jerome Konazi is probably more popular than most politicians.
People are willing to take to the streets to say that we are going to protect this guy with everything that we have.
So I do think there are politicians who must be looking at Jerome Konazi right now and thinking of him as a threat to their power and popularity. I'm sure Mkonazi is giving a lot of people sleepless nights.
He's quite a popular figure right now.
A popular figure started a party 6 months before the 2024 election.
And got 15%.
Bits.
Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms. Weekdays 6 to 9 a.m.
This is your world. Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
On tonight's Power Suit, we speak to someone who's been a force for justice and a leader in some of the country's biggest companies, advocate Thandi Orleyn. She began her career at the Legal Resources Centre and helped set up the CCMA, giving workers a voice and transforming labour relations. Later, she stepped into some of the biggest boardrooms, including BP Southern Africa, Toyota Southern Africa, Impala Platinum, and the Industrial Development Corporation. Tonight, we're going to be hearing where it all began, the lessons she's learned along the way, and what still drives her. And as always, we want to hear from you. Send us your questions or thoughts as we go on 0861 987 000, WhatsApps or voice notes on 083 303 7093. Advocate Thandi, welcome to Power Business. It's fantastic to have you in studio this evening.
Thanks, Tehillah. It's lovely to be here tonight.
Thank you so much for coming in. Let's start right at the beginning. What are some of your strongest memories that you have growing up in New Brighton in the Eastern Cape?
Thanks for that question, because you take me back a long time. And the strongest sense is that of community, that of cohesion. Remember, we're talking the depths of apartheid. Right. And New Brighton was very strong politically, with people who've moved from Boko to including ANC in exile, Steve Biko and the BC. So from that side, it was very strong. Also in sport. As you know, that's where Kwaru was formed in rugby. We were strong in athletics, tennis, all the sports. And this was all happening in the township. So people from New Brighton were part of the formation of the slogan that there is no sport in an abnormal society.
And there was a very strong feeling around that. So was that something that inspired your activism as well as your love of sport? I'm looking at your shirt with the tennis rackets on.
Definitely. We lived 3 things at home. We lived sport, politics, and religion.
Wow. Those are 3 interesting anchors, and you still strongly identify with those 3 anchors or principles?
Definitely. I love my sport. I've got a deep faith. I think I've been more open in my approach to religion, to deepen it to faith, and politics, of course.
And then you went to Inanda Seminary, and that also had a strong reputation for producing women leaders. What was that like, and how did that inspire some of your early activism?
That, as you know, it was a girls-only school, boarding school, crazy. But there was a sense
Why
of...
crazy?
Because, you know, when teenage girls are all together all the time,
Yes.
you know, but we had a sense of identity, sense of strong values against a Christian school. It still is there, very active. And so it gave me anchor, it gave me direction, and I think it defined my womanhood more than anything.
It's one of the oldest all women schools, all girls schools.
It's over 150 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then you went on to study law. And what was your inspiration behind studying law?
When I grew up, it was not part of my thinking. My thoughts were somewhere else. I won't share on radio. But I believe that with what was happening in the 70s, went to University of Fort Hare. As you know, a lot of illuminaries went to Fort Hare. And student politics, understanding that it's so important to have an anchor that would anchor your purpose. And law became that to me. I felt that I could fight the struggle much better with a law degree.
Were you part of the student politics at Fort Hare?
Definitely. If some of my Fort Hare colleagues are listening, we were there in the 70s because I got expelled in 1980. They would tell you all about it.
And so the 70s were a really turbulent time in South Africa. What was going through your mind during that period? And getting expelled, that must have felt been quite a difficult experience.
Tehillah, we were very strong. We felt and we believed that we will overcome, in Martin Luther's terminology. We believed the struggle is going to be won. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind.
There wasn't a lot of hope at the time in the 1970s. It looked quite bleak, and it only started really changing from what I've read in the 1980s. So where did you see, what did you hold on to?
People have to read the history to understand the struggle of South Africa. You know, even pre-1912, there was already a lot of struggle. 1912 to me arose because of what was seen as the betrayal of 1910. And so as you move through the years, there's quite a lot of kind of hot spots, like the white miners' strike in 1922. So you take the historical background, and people may see it from 76. They don't understand that even after the PAC massacres in 1960, which was linked to the Declaration of the Republic of South Africa, that things happened in the 60s. And so when 76 hit, it was another flare-up. And as you know, there was a further flare-up in 1980. And as the repression became worse, the state of emergencies in 1985, there is a long build-up around these issues. And then the geopolitics started impacting on the issues in the country as it is now.
Right, and that was one of the very important principles that led to the fall of apartheid. So with all that strong history, you started out as a lawyer at the Legal Resources Centre, and you worked on some very important cases. What was your time there like?
I must say, the person who opened my eyes to the Legal Resources Centre was actually our former Chief Justice, the first one, Judge Arthur Traskelson, who set up the Legal Resources Centre with other people, came to Fort Hare to kind of give us his vision. And I knew this is what I wanted to do. So when I went there, I saw my purpose being served. And in that context, I really was in terms of fighting apartheid from a legal perspective. And in the latter part of the 80s, looking at constitutionalism. But the cases I got involved in, I came in the latter part of the cases that were breaking down the past laws. And then moved, because I joined them in 1985 with the state of emergency. So I represented a lot of detainees. 1987, pregnant, going to Sun City to represent people. Going, as the repression became worse, going to court, bringing applications against people. And just because the Minister of Police says he has information which he didn't say, then we lost the cases. And then moving to consumer law, you know, in terms of acting in support of the boycotts in the townships, housing, non-payment of rent. So there was a lot of scope to address the atrocities in various ways.
There must have been an incredibly difficult time to be a lawyer, but also fulfilling.
We were pushing the boundaries of the law, and that's what excited me.
And then when democracy came, you continued to use many of those principles in setting up the architecture of our current labour relations in the CCMA.
Yes. Just to say that one of my proud moments at the LRC before I left was to be part of the team that dealt with the death penalty case. But moving that from there...
Okay, what happened? What happened there with the death penalty case?
Remember, there was the question of whether the Constitution's interpretation was that the death penalty was not allowed in the country. And that was the Makwanyane case. And so we had to argue in terms of the basis on which the Constitution should be interpreted around the death penalty. And that's when, therefore, the stamp that it is not allowed under our Constitution came through from a legal perspective from that case.
So that's a huge win.
Yeah, it was. It was really a very interesting matter. And then I started at IMSA, which was the forebearer of the CCMA. I know these acronyms may confuse people. IMSA is the Independent Mediation Service of South Africa, which was basically formed by trade unions and employers who realized that at that time the Industrial Relations Act was not effective because black people were not regarded as employees in terms of the act. And therefore, the moment the new constitution came into effect, one of the first legislations was the Labour Relations Act of 1995. And I was asked to join the CCMA after it was formed in 1996. So I joined as the first black woman director in 1997.
You've had a lot of firsts in your career, and I want to get to some of those, but it must have been momentous to see the Constitution being adopted in 1996 for you, having had to work with during apartheid legislation.
Yes. We, prior to 1994, as lawyers, we were being exposed to the various kind of constitutionalism, various kind of systems from the UK, their evolution, Europe, Canada, America. So by the time the Constitution was adopted, we had done a lot of work. And therefore, joining the committees around the development of the Constitution was also revealing, but just making it work in practice and now seeing all the lacunas, all the unintended consequences, I just no longer want to go back to practice. So I'm dealing with it from a different perspective.
And I'm interested in specifically on labour relations, having come from working so hard to set up our labour relations, the current framework and the CCMA, which has given voice to so many people, how you see labour relations today in South Africa.
Calmer, more acceptable, because when I joined, we had very young, inexperienced commissioners. But we were determined that we were going to get people experience. So, and we didn't expect the inundation of cases that we got. But we worked hard. It was one of the first systems in the country that was completely electronic. And therefore, there was lots to do. And we worked to a point where, as you speak now, it's not one of the major issues in the news. Whereas, if you were to go back to the records, the CCMA was talked about how it was failing, how it was falling apart, but now it's part of society.
Yes, it's a vital part of society and how it functions. And then I want to get your view, Advocate. You moved into the corporate boardroom. You set up an investment vehicle in 2005. What was that like? What was that taking that next step?
It was recognizing that political freedom is nothing without economic emancipation. When we were looking at the Constitution, we were looking at the change in democracy. the issue of economics was not on the table. There were people talking about it on the sidelines. There were people in the back rooms, but it was never articulated what, how, and towards what end. So as we can see, there's lots of complaints, there's lots of challenges around it. And so for me, I always, I think, like to be on the thick of things and want to see change. So I believe that I have to be the change that I want to see. And I thought, rather than decide on a career to go to the bench, I would rather go to business and see how I can be part of the change there.
In 2025, I don't really like using the term first black woman or first woman or any of those first, because we should be long past that. But you were the first black person, the first woman in many of the boardrooms that you sat in. And what were the kinds of challenges that you experienced?
I think the legal profession helped me because it was mainly male-dominated. So by the time I got to the boardroom...
Okay, so it was easier.
I knew I had the tools.
Right,
you know?
right.
And I had mentors who were men who helped me navigate that space. And also with a strong background in mediation and negotiations. So you have to use all the tools that you have. You don't only have to be aggressive. And as a woman, I believe that we have more tools around negotiating.
What are some of those tools that you think we have?
The main thing is that your softness, so you don't have to be aggressive. You know, they say with a lot of testosterone in the room, men can be very aggressive. Don't raise to that aggressive state. Be firm, have confidence, and don't move from a point that you believe has not been addressed. And I think that has been my strength in the boardroom.
8 minutes before 8, we're in conversation with advocate Thandi Orleyn, who's our power suit for this Thursday evening. She's the chairperson at Impala Platinum and the outgoing BP Southern Africa chairperson. We're going to take your calls on 0861 987 000 and WhatsApps on 083 303 7093. Let's go to a WhatsApp message from Tsepang in Woodmead. Your career is truly inspiring. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced when trying to embed inclusivity and transformation into corporate culture, and how did you overcome them?
Thank you for that question. The first two challenges are that there are no women, there are no black people. The second one is that these people are not ready, you know, and you ask yourself, when did white people get ready? What made them get ready? Because really you find very young, vibrant white people. And now we're finding very young, vibrant black people. So for me, where I am in the spaces that I'm in, particularly if you look back at my 14 years at BPSA, we have very young, vibrant, young people of all races. So that was a major challenge. And I believe that people must be tenacious. They must not be told they are not there.
Yeah, lots of messages about transformation this evening, and it correlates a little bit with our previous discussion on employment equity legislation. WhatsApp message from Zweli in Katlehong. Transformation has often been described as a slow process. From your vantage point, what has held it back mostly? Policy gaps, lack of will, or something else? Well, that's a tough one.
Not really. In that, I have a different perspective where I start by saying the term of saying slow is relative. So it depends from your position of departure. The moment you take a global view of South Africa, then you will take the lowest common denominator. Whereas if I had time to give you an example of BP, then you would know that over 14 years. Now you'll say to me, is that a time that you would believe is slow, is fine, or is too fast? If I take Implats, where I was at Implats originally from 2004 to 2015. When I got there was 2% women, and when I left, there were about 10%. Now we're at 20%. Now it's about a space of about 20 years. Again, you have to judge. And it's always from your position of where you are at that point in time.
That's exactly right. A WhatsApp message from Lorato in Soweto. What advice would you give to the next generation of black women leaders looking to enter boardrooms in sectors still dominated by men?
Know your stuff. Be confident in your knowledge, not in your color or your gender. The moment you know what you know and you are confident about it, you can stand up to anybody. Anyway.
And that stood you in good stead over the years.
Yes.
I want to ask you this question, and you've been involved in so many organizations you've described, and you're still involved in so many organizations. How do you keep everything straight? How do you manage to juggle so many responsibilities?
I get that question a lot, particularly from women. They say, well, work-life balance. And I say, what is that? And in a patriarchal society, you've got to be very careful of your framing. What do you talk about? How do you define things? Is there something called perfection? You know, do you want to be an executive and a cook at home? You know, do you want to rush home and cook the perfect meal every night, and in the morning to be fresh in the boardroom with your colleagues who are men who don't feel they have to do that? So it's your framing. Do you provide food, or do you cook? You know, so that then it becomes everybody's responsibility. Yourself, your husband if you are married, your children if you have them, everybody must be able to provide food in your household. That's one example because of time. But there's so many things that the way we frame them. Like I was talking to a young woman who's a young Makoti, and she was saying, oh, my Mama Zala is tough on me. I said, why? Is she not a modern Mama Zala like me? We need to teach your Mama Zala, you know. So it's those kind of things that people must start talking about.
I'm interested in the way you talk about framing, and we just had a discussion on Power Business about the upcoming legislation on employment equity targets, and there's obviously some controversy around that. Just briefly, your thoughts on employment equity being moved to a quota system rather than voluntary?
Again, the terminology of a quota system. I was a cricket administrator. And at that time, I was in cricket officially until 2011. So people like Makaya and Dini didn't like the term quotas because in the change room, the other guys are seeing you as less. So I don't like the quota system issue. However, you have to make sure that there is transformation. There's different ways to work on transformation without the issue of quotas. And my challenges about making quotas is that it forces, on the one hand, people to employ people that are not capable and fire them all the time to prove their point, instead of making sure they get the right people from the first time. You know, but we have to find a way to advance transformation, and from all angles. If black, white, as in the country, I'll use those extremes, and everybody in between decided that we have to find a way for us to be at the table.
We've spent a lot of time this evening talking about the boardroom, talking about work, talking about the various cases you've been involved in outside of work. What brings you joy? You touched briefly on cooking or not wanting or not needing to cook as often.
I love cooking. Luckily, everybody in my house does.
That's a good principle.
Yes, my daughter is a chef. So
you're lucky then.
Yeah. I love sport. You dragged me out of watching the second semi-finals of the women's.
I do apologize. We'll get you back there soon.
And I play golf. I love spending time with my grandchildren. I've got 3, and I love my family. I've got a huge family. So all those things bring me joy. Love reading, love traveling.
We actually ask every power suit, what book are you currently reading? What's inspiring you at the moment?
I'm reading All Rise by former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke, the lawyer. And I've just finished the book, the biography on Harry Oppenheimer. So interesting.
Oh, that's very interesting. The book by the former Deputy Chief Justice is on my to-do list. It's on my to-read list. Thank you very much for coming into studio. Feels like we didn't quite have enough time to fully get everything that we were hoping to talk to you about. We'll have to bring you back into studio sometime. Thanks for coming in and talking to us, engaging our listeners. That's Advocate Thandi Orleyn, who's the chairperson of Impala Platinum and outgoing BP Southern Africa chairperson. It's been the Power Business this Thursday evening.
Power Business was proudly brought to you by MTN. Today, we make moves.